I am told by boat enthusiasts, of which I know a few, that life is lived on a boat. Most times that boat rests on calm waters, but sometimes that boat goes out into troubled seas. Whether we own a boat or not, we all understand the metaphor of sailing out into the rough seas of our lives from time to time. At least if you are human, you do. That's just life. During these scary moments when the sea turns rough, we know we need a life jacket or another hand to help us on the deck. We know that we need to steady the boat as quickly as we can, but there are those times when all we can do is just sit there frozen in fear while the storm crashes in around us. If you are like me if you are like me on my boat somewhere, somehow out in those crazy waves, there are those times when I hear the comforting words of Jesus calling out to me, come. And when I hear that voice, I sometimes am able to forget my fear and actually jump into the water and even try to walk. The voice gives me the faith that I can carry on despite the rough seas. Last week, can you believe it? Reed and I spent 5 days together up in North Carolina, and we spent those 5 days in celebration of the 47 years that we've been married. I remember that day because it was an extremely muggy afternoon on August 4th. I found myself in the unlikely place of Providence Baptist Church in Clay Alabama. Clay, I'm here to tell you, is a long way from my ancestral home in Chicago, Illinois. I knew that I was in particularly rough seas that afternoon. My boat was ready to capsize. Standing immediately in front of me was a Presbyterian minister. You hear that, Ben? A Presbyterian minister by the name of Angus Shaw III from Dothan, Alabama. Reverend Shaw was there trying desperately to get me to repeat after him some unbelievably strange words about my intentions towards this beautiful young woman who was standing perplexed next to me. What can I say? I was scared to death. I was shaking and sweating in an air-conditioned church. As Reverend Shaw talked, I couldn't stop staring at him for fear I might not get his words correct. I tried desperately to repeat those words, but for the life of me, all I could do was stare at him. Not once did I even attempt to even glance at Rita, who was soon to be my wife. Reverend Shaw, in his defense, tried repeatedly to get me to look at her. He sat there and kept shaking his hand and his foot and his mouth and all of it, trying to get me to look at Rita, but I just couldn't. I just was frozen and I just wasn't going to do it. I wasn't going to look at her while I said my vows. I began to feel that cold, glassy stare of my bride burning into me. I heard her eyes scream, "Look at me, you fool! You're marrying me, not him." Her cold stare made no difference to me. I discovered that my boat was rocking as if it was a hurricane. The sea came crashing in upon me. But thanks be to God, I finally heard Jesus calling out to me, "Jump, Bill, jump. I've got you. Come on. One foot in front of the other. Now get out here and walk." And that was all it took. I was fine after that. Fine at least until I drove away from the church with this beautiful woman next to me, who I had just told Reverend Shaw I was going to spend the rest of my life with. As we both sat there thinking about the rest of our lives with one another, I suppose we both began to sink back down in the water a little bit for fear. 35 years ago, I was doing well and enjoying my job in the steel industry. We had purchased a small home in Dothan, Alabama. Our two children were healthy and particularly loud at that age. We even had a small but growing savings account. Our boat felt mighty secure at this point. Then came this letter. The letter was from the bishop telling me to pack my stuff, sell my house, and get myself up to a small town in Tennessee by the name of Swanee. I unbelievably had been accepted as a first year student in seminary. I was going to be, of all things, in 3 years, a priest. And I couldn't imagine any of that happening. Well, I took that letter to the Church of the Nativity in Dothan, where I was a member, and I marched, I tell you, right down the center aisle of that sanctuary. I was waving that letter, waving it, that full letter, fiercely in the air, yelling, "Why, God, are you doing this to me? Why are you doing it to me? Everything is going good. Life is calm. I've got everything I need. For the first time in my life, everything is hunky dory." In my anguished plea, I heard almost audibly the words, "Lo, I am with you to the end of the age." Or maybe it was, come to think of it, I told you to get out of the boat. Don't worry about the waves. They'll just come out and walk. And somehow, I did just that. And I stayed at that dock at Swanee for 3 unforgettable years. When all of a sudden Swanee told me that I had done quite enough to graduate, and it was time to leave its shore and learn once again to walk on the water, which I did until I arrived at St. John's, Mobile, when again I began to sink in down in that murky water to my knees. I was scared again. Through the years, I have discovered that the only life worth living, even with all the risks, were those moments when I was willing to get out of the boat and walk, even if it were but for a few steps. Those were the times I took the risk of grabbing that hand which was reaching out to me when I heard that calm voice firmly calling to me to step out onto the water and walk. Now, to be honest, I must tell you, there were still plenty of times that I sank. In fact, I still stink. I still sink. And maybe if truth were told, I'm sinking right now. That is the truth. But I firmly believe that my life has been far better by taking the risk of jumping out of the boat in the midst of the storm than just staying put in that boat. If nothing else, I would have always wondered how my life would have turned out if I wouldn't have had the faith and courage to follow my Lord and step out of that boat and walk. Obviously, these stories are but a few of my odysseys while in the boat of my life. And I realize that my stormy moments are not any different than your boat stories. Each of us are all in our own boats, holding on for dear life, wanting to be safe, desiring to be safe. But then our call comes to get out and walk. I believe it is none other than Jesus out on that sea, pleading with us to come, come, my friend. Don't worry. I've got you. Don't worry. You can make it. Just get up and walk. You can do it. Just open yourselves to the vision that lies directly in front of you. Our Lord is always there telling us to have faith, to take his hand, to get up out of our boat and walk. As Nike would say, just do it. Our safety is not found back in the rocking boat. That is an illusion. What we discover as we jump out of the boat is life, and life abundant. I believe for Peter, for myself, as well as all of us who grab that hand and take the risk to come out into the raging sea, we will discover as we walk the meaning of life. That is until we start thinking about what we are doing and sink back down into the water up to our knees. But hey, no worry. That hand promises to always be with us, always to the end of the times. My friends, it seems to me that as we get older, and I am doing that, it becomes more difficult to hear Jesus asking us, pleading with us to get out of the boat and come out into the water. At least it does for me. It seems a great deal calmer to wear my life jacket and anchor myself way down in the hold of the boat. I know only too well that things outside my boat can hurt me, and I don't want to hurt anymore. I've done that. I've been there. But think about it. Never has there been a time in our lives that we have been so free to chance the waves, to hear our Lord and bravely go out and walk. I need not be afraid. You need not be afraid. There is much to be accomplished. There is much to be accomplished in the name of Christ. There is much to do. And what's more, we have more resources at our disposal than we ever have had in our sailing career. So, come on, my friends. We have all the resources we need to follow Jesus out onto the waves and walk. Just come. Hey, I've got an idea. Let's all get together. Let's all hold hands, at least, or bump elbows and jump together. Let's jump together. What do we have to lose? Even if we start sinking a bit, Jesus promises to be there no matter if we walk or if we swim. So let's jump. I hear the water's fine. Amen.